This is a short video about court dockets. So what is a court docket? Basically, it's a summary of the proceeding in a case. Let's look at this LibGuide created by Laurel Davis, one of the librarians at Boston College. It gives us a lot of information about what a docket is and how to find one. So if we scroll down and look at what she says about a docket sheet at a glance. This is an edited version of a docket, so it lists the most important filings you might see on a Supreme Court docket, such as briefs and motions. Usually when we pull up a docket, if the case has been in the court for a while, it'll be a lot longer, and we'll see some examples of that when we run our searches. Let's look at federal dockets now. A lot of the sources are going to be similar for the U.S. Supreme Court, the Federal Court of Appeals, and the Federal District Courts, except for the free resources that we might be able to find on the various websites. So let's just look at the Federal Courts of Appeals. If you have questions about U.S. Supreme Court dockets or District Court dockets, you could look at those particular pages on this guide. So there are a number of resources here. There's links to the courts themselves, and there's lists of different subscription databases that might be helpful. Bloomberg Law, Westlaw, Lexis, and Pacer. So let's look at Westlaw first, because we're all familiar with Westlaw next. This is the main page on Westlaw Next, and you can see you have choices about what you search for. You can search for cases, you can search in a briefs database, or you could search directly in the dockets database. I find one of the easiest way to find dockets associated with cases I'm interested in is to search for the cases directly. So for example, I ran a search looking for cases that talked about bong hits for Jesus, which was a famous freedom of speech case. We get the case itself, Morse v. Frederick, and also some additional cases. Let's scroll down and look at this one, Cuff. I'm just looking at this one because it's a more recent case. At the top, in addition to the history that we normally look at on KeyCite and the citing references, there's also a link for filings for lots of federal documents on Westlaw. One of these links includes the dockets. Let's look at the docket for the most recent Second Circuit case. On Westlaw, it will tell you how current the docket is and give you the option of updating the docket. Let's take just a quick look at the information. It gives you the current date, the case information, lower court information. And when you look at this docket, you can see that it includes a lot more than the sample docket we had on the LibGuide, including things such as entering into the record when they put things on the calendar, acknowledgement of notices to appear, so acknowledgments by the court of things they've received. Let's see if we can find the briefs here. Okay, so here we can see a record for one of the briefs. Let's see if we have access to the PDF on Westlaw. Sometimes this will happen. We'll say that we don't have access. I just want you to remember this case. We're going to look for this same case on Bloomberg. So let's get some basic information about this case. It's Cuff versus Valley Central School District. I'm just going to copy that and save it later for our Bloomberg search. And we know that it's in the Second Circuit. So let's scroll back out to dockets. So in addition to looking at the cases and looking at the dockets from the cases, we can also directly search dockets on Westlaw. And you can see they have federal dockets of the Supreme Court, the Appeals Court, the District Courts, Bankruptcy Courts. So we could limit our search by the court that we were interested in. And they also have a number of state dockets. So let's click over to Bloomberg and we'll look for that Cuff case again. So on Bloomberg, to find dockets, we want to be in the Litigation and Dockets tab. And we're going to search for the docket. On Bloomberg, you have to add or you get a bit better result if you add in the particular circuit you're interested in. So you can browse circuits, federal court dockets, United States Courts of Appeal, Second Circuit, which I've already added, so it shows up here. Then what I do is I hit multiple party entry, and I can just put in my cut and paste, and it tells us that we enter the two parties in with a semicolon. The reason I do it this way is sometimes the docket number I see on Westlaw, it doesn't pick it up in Bloomberg. The formatting is a little bit different. And if I use the party names, I've had better luck on Bloomberg. And then I click search. So let's look at the most recent docket, 2010. Again, they're telling us when this docket was last updated. If this was from a while ago, we could hit update docket to make sure we have the most recent information. And then if we scroll down, the formatting's a little bit different on Westlaw, but it's all the same information here. And again, let's see if we can find one of the briefs. So here's a reply brief. And we can click on the number 27, and we get this message that says an additional fee will be added. For federal docket information underlying filings, we can click submit and ignore that box. And what will happen is if they can pull this underlying document from Pacer, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, they'll pull it and it will get posted here. You'll also get an email. If you get an email that says you need to send a courier to the court, at that point you would say, I'm not interested in this document. So the docket itself is this list of all the information of what happened in this court proceeding. And then the underlying documents, such as briefs, we would get to by linking here. Let's just update to see if that came into. So you can see it turned blue. That's how quickly they were able to pull this brief from Pacer. So we've looked at the first two, Westlaw and Bloomberg, and I mentioned Pacer. So let's just take a quick look at the Pacer website. So Pacer is actually the electronic filing system for the federal courts, and they also make those filings available to the public. And you can get coverage data, what's the coverage for the particular courts, off of the LibGuide I showed you. Pacer is a password-only database, so if you needed to use it, you would have to get a password from the librarian. Basically, all of the documents on Pacer you can get by accessing the dockets on Bloomberg. So a couple of quirks on Pacer. On Pacer, you have to look for documents by case name in a large case locator, or you can search the court directly. So I've logged into Pacer at the Second Circuit, and I'm going to put the party here and search by party, just so you can get a sense of what the docket sheet looks like on Pacer. Let's look at the full docket. You can see the full docket is a lot longer. And anything that has a blue hyperlink we could open on Pacer. Okay, so we've looked at Bloomberg, Westlaw, and Pacer. Let's just take a quick look at Lexis. It's easiest if you're just looking for dockets to still be on Lexis.com. And here is the breadcrumbs for how we're going to get into CourtLink, which provides the best docket coverage on Lexis. So let's just quickly look at that. If you start in your main search page, you're going to want to look at Court Records, View More, Court Records, View More, and then even though it seems counterintuitive, litigants, attorneys, and judge strategic profiles gets us into CourtLink. And we just want to go from strategic profiles to dockets. And this will search for dockets and the underlying documents as well. Let's just run a quick search. When you see this charge, you can just ignore it. That's not a charge for us at the law school, but it does give you a sense of how expensive this database is for the firms. And then you can see a list of dockets. We got 32 dockets that were responsive to our search, and also underlying documents here. So these include briefs, complaints, motions, a lot of underlying documents. Okay, so that's LexisNexis CourtLink. So let's go back to our LibGuide and look briefly at the sources for Massachusetts dockets. There are dockets on Bloomberg, Westlaw, and Lexis. You won't see Pacer here because that's a federal system. There's also some information in Massachusetts where you can get freely available dockets on the web. For other state dockets, there's some information on the guide about where to go to find dockets in other states, including this nice page on LLRX on court rules, forms, and dockets. It just gives us some clickable links into where we can find things in other states. So hopefully this has given you some basic background information on what a docket is and where to find those dockets. You can always refer back to this LibGuide by going to the Boston College Law Library page and looking for our research guides.